Imagine a world where the oceans are gone, cities are buried beneath endless sand dunes, and giant monsters hide under the desert waiting to devour anyone unlucky enough to cross their path. In this ruined world, humanity survives inside isolated strongholds, while powerful people, known as awakeners, rule over everyone else. And among the countless weak people struggling to survive, there's one boy who gains the ability to control the sand itself. His name is Xian. The story begins with Xian trapped inside a transport vehicle alongside a bunch of violent thugs who enjoy bullying weaker people. One of them starts beating him around for fun, but despite being powerless, Xian refuses to stay down and punches back. The problem is that the thug has connections to an awakener, and in this world, crossing powerful people is basically suicide. Xian already knows how terrifying that can be because not long ago, someone tried stealing from him and mysteriously died during the fight. Ever since then, he's lived in fear that somebody stronger will come after him. Before things can get worse, disaster suddenly strikes. The vehicle violently flips over, people start screaming, and the driver reveals the horrifying truth before dying. A gigantic sandworm is beneath them. At first, Xian thinks he's dead, but when he wakes up, he realizes he's somehow still alive inside the sandworm's body. Surrounded by darkness and the buried remains of the old world, Xian begins seeing fragments of humanity lost beneath the desert. And in that moment, something inside him changes. His body surges with energy, his heartbeat grows louder, and instinct suddenly takes over. Without understanding how, Xian raises his hand and unleashes a powerful blast of compressed sand straight through the sandworm's body. The creature explodes apart from the inside, throwing Xian back onto the desert, alive. That's when he realizes the impossible truth. He awakened. For the first time in his life, Xian finally has power. But before he can even process what happened, another massive sandworm appears right in front of him. The creature towers over him like a mountain, ready to devour him instantly. Xian braces himself for death, only for a mysterious man to suddenly appear out of nowhere. Moving at unbelievable speed, the stranger drives the sword straight into the monster's neck, before destroying it with a single, devastating kick. Xian is completely stunned. To him, sandworms are unstoppable monsters, yet this guy killed one effortlessly. The man introduces himself as Captain Jang Youngbium, and beside him is a blue-haired woman named Giselle, who appears just as terrifying. She instantly restrains Xian and starts inspecting him, like he's some suspicious animal. But then she notices something strange. Xian doesn't have a visible insignia. Every awakener is supposed to carry a mark showing their rank and abilities, yet Xian appears to have none. Even he doesn't understand why. Eventually, the captain decides to spare him and allows Xian to travel with their group. While riding with them, Xian secretly experiments with his newfound abilities and realizes he truly can manipulate sand itself. He eventually discovers that his insignia does exist, but unlike normal ones, it blends perfectly with the color of sand. Even stranger, his power doesn't fit any known awakener category. Nobody has ever heard of someone controlling sand like this before. And despite currently being only F rank, Xian realizes something terrifying. His power has limitless potential. In a world completely covered by sand, that ability could eventually become unstoppable. The group later arrives at a massive mana crystal mining settlement. Xian expects dark tunnels and suffering workers, but instead, the place almost feels lively. People are trading, eating, and moving around like it's a normal city. Still, something about the atmosphere feels wrong. While looking for food, Xian meets an old merchant covered in scars. The man asks him if he knows what truly powers the city. Xian assumes it's mana stones, but the old man laughs and says the real fuel source is people. Workers are constantly sent into the mines until they die, and whenever one disappears, another desperate person replaces them. Human lives are treated like disposable resources. The conversation gets even darker when the merchant points toward a giant pile of junk behind his stall. According to him, those are the belongings left behind by dead workers who came chasing fortune and lost everything. The mine consumes people slowly, taking their possessions, dignity, and eventually their lives. And according to the merchant, Xian will end up exactly the same. Things quickly spiral out of control when Xian realizes the food prices are absurdly expensive. The moment he refuses to pay, armed men begin surrounding him from every direction. That's when Xian realizes the entire marketplace is corrupt. This was a setup from the beginning. The old merchant demands the mana stone Xian obtained earlier, but Xian refuses immediately because that stone represents everything he suffered through. The old man gives up on talking and one massive thug suddenly slams Xian's head straight into a table, while the others prepare to kill him. And finally Xian snaps. The sand around him erupts violently as he unleashes a compressed blast from his hand. In a single horrifying moment, the thug's arm is blown completely off. Blood sprays across the marketplace as everyone freezes in shock, because the weak little nobody they tried to rob just revealed a power capable of controlling the entire desert. The severed arm crashes to the ground, and the precious mana stone slips straight into the hands of the very men who were planning to kill Xian. For one brief moment, he imagines a perfect revenge. Hundreds of razor-sharp sand spikes erupt from the earth, tearing through every corrupt thug standing around him. But it's only a fantasy. Reality is much crueler. His vision blurs, blood runs from his nose, and the overwhelming strain forces his power to collapse before he can fight back. With no other choice, Xian reluctantly hands over the mana stone. The old merchant can't hide his surprise. Judging by its size, he estimates it's worth around 100 souls. But Xian immediately calls him out. No chance. A stone this big is worth at least 300. Unfortunately, being right doesn't matter when the other person holds all the power. The old man mocks him again, saying Xian should have died out in the desert instead of showing up to negotiate. The insult nearly pushes Xian over the edge. His hand tightens, and the sand beneath his feet begins to stir, but he forces himself to stop. Not yet. He's still too weak to win this fight. Swallowing his pride, Xian asks for a bonus instead. The old merchant agrees and points toward a pile of discarded junk, telling him to pick whatever he wants. Most of it is worthless broken tools, scraps of metal, rotting equipment, nothing useful. Still, Xian carefully searches through every single item. In a place where people kill for a single coin, it's strange to see someone refuse to waste even the smallest opportunity. Then something catches his eye, a tiny hourglass. Even the merchant pauses, admitting it's an unusual item. Ignoring the mountain of junk, Xian chooses the hourglass as his reward. As he walks away, the merchant laughs, teasing him for trading a fortune for trash. Before leaving, Xian asks one final question. What's your name? The old man grins. Clixi. Xian quietly burns that name into his memory, not because he plans to thank him, but because one day, they may meet again, under very different circumstances. Back in his tiny room, Xian examines the mysterious hourglass. The sand inside takes roughly 10 minutes to fall from top to bottom. Thinking it might be connected to his awakening, he focuses with everything he has and commands the sand to move. Nothing. Not even a single grain responds. His ability still makes no sense. No one has ever shown powers like his before, yet something about this hourglass feels different, almost as if it had been waiting for him. Before he can figure it out, the door explodes open. A burly miner storms inside, barking orders before Xian can even speak. Apparently, the new kid is already late for work. Xian politely asks him to show a little respect, but that turns out to be a terrible mistake. The man drives an uppercut straight into Xian's jaw, sending him crashing across the room. Before he can recover, another punch buries itself into his stomach. Then a heavy boot pins him to the floor. The brute sneers down at him, to awakened people. Someone like Xian is nothing but an unawakened nobody, and nobodies survive by keeping their heads down, not by talking back. Satisfied with the beating, the man finally introduces himself as Manhwa. A name Xian immediately adds to the growing list of people he refuses to forgive. As he slowly stands back up, bruised but unbroken, he stares directly into Manhwa's eyes. One day, I'm going to kill you. Manhwa drags him to the third mining sector, where Xian receives his equipment and a quick explanation of his new life. Every tool, every meal, even the helmet on his head will be deducted from his wages. His only job is to dig up mana stones. It sounds simple enough, or so he thinks. The moment Xian opens his mouth to ask another question, Manhwa smashes his pickaxe straight into Xian's helmet, splitting it apart with a loud crack. He coldly warns him that ignorance won't save him. If the equipment breaks, the debt belongs to Xian. Then comes the real punishment. Manhwa orders his men to throw him into shaft 972, the worst tunnel in the entire mine. Before Xian disappears underground, Manhwa leaves him with one final warning. Return with a mana stone, or don't return at all. Failure means execution. Even the worker escorting Xian can't hide the truth. Everyone knows shaft 972 is cursed. More than a dozen miners have entered, and none of them have ever come back. Apparently, Manhwa lost money gambling earlier that day, and Xian is simply the unlucky person chosen to pay for it. As they travel deeper into the mine, the atmosphere grows heavier. Xian notices something strange. The mana in this tunnel is unbelievably dense, and it's enough that ordinary people should have collapsed long ago. Finally, they reach the entrance. Xian asks the obvious question. So I just collect a mana stone and come back. The worker lowers his head before quietly admitting the truth. There won't be a way back. After apologizing, he abandons Xian completely. Left alone inside a tunnel everyone believes is a death sentence. Xian's anger boils over. They're not sending him here to work. They're sending him here to die. Still, giving up has never been an option. He grabs his pickaxe and swings, only for the handle to snap apart instantly. The broken tool flies deeper into the tunnel, and as Xian chases after it, the ground beneath his feet suddenly disappears. A massive black void opens below him, and before he can react, he's swallowed whole. As he falls into the darkness, painful memories flash through his mind. A childhood filled with hunger, people constantly telling him he'd never survive. Every dream crushed before it could begin. Every struggle ending in violence. He remembers the blood on his own hands, and the desperate escape that eventually brought him to Neo Seoul. Then everything goes black. When Xian finally opens his eyes again, an unbearable wave of heat crashes into him. Ash drifts through the air while molten rock glows in every direction. He picks up a nearby stone, only to throw it away in agony as it burns his hand. This isn't an illusion. He's fallen into a volcanic dungeon. The suffocating ash alone is enough to kill him. Thinking quickly, Xian tears off part of his clothes and wraps it around his face. If there's an entrance, there has to be an exit, and the highest point of the volcano is his best chance of finding it. Without wasting another second, he runs. The journey is pure hell. Boiling lava nearly swallows him. Crumbling cliffs collapse beneath his feet, and every step pushes him closer to death. But every close call only hardens his resolve. His hatred for Manhwa burns hotter than the volcano itself. If he escapes this place, Manhwa will pay. Alas, the summit comes into view. Just for more jumps stand between him and survival. Xian launches forward, only for the lava to explode. A gigantic reptilian monster erupts from the molten lake and swallows him in a single bite before disappearing beneath the surface. It should have been over, but moments later, the beast suddenly looks up. Clinging to a cliffside above it, Xian is still alive. During the attack, he instinctively manipulated the volcanic ash around him just enough to escape the monster's jaws. It's the first real clue about the true nature of his mysterious power. Unfortunately, surviving one attack doesn't solve his biggest problem. The heat is unbearable, his lungs burn with every breath, and his vision slowly begins to fade. For a terrifying moment, Xian truly believes this is where his story ends. Then he clenches his fists. No, he refuses to die here. Using every ounce of strength he has left, Xian gathers the volcanic ash around him and prepares for one final stand. The monster erupts from the lava again, but before either side can strike, a calm voice echoes across the battlefield. Someone has been watching. The mysterious stranger praises Xian's unusual ability before descending from the sky with impossible speed. Sword in hand, the old man crashes into the monster with a single devastating strike. The impact sends shockwaves through the entire dungeon, forcing rivers of lava to split apart and leaving Xian staring in disbelief at the unbelievable warrior who had just saved his life. The force of that single strike was so overwhelming that Xian could barely stay on his feet. The shockwave alone ruptured his eardrums, leaving everything around him muffled as his vision struggled to focus. When the dust finally settled, he looked ahead and froze. The monster that had nearly ended his life moments ago had been sliced perfectly in half. Standing before it was the old swordsman, completely unfazed, as if cutting down a monster of that size required no more effort than chopping firewood. It was then that Xian realized this man wasn't simply a powerful awakener. He belonged to an entirely different class of monster. The old man casually took another step forward, but even that simple movement carried an overwhelming pressure. Xian couldn't take his eyes off him. Before he knew it, the old man was asking for his name. Still trying to recover from the ringing in his ears, Xian didn't respond, making the old man sigh in disappointment. "All right then," he said. "I'll count to 3. If you don't answer by then, things might get unpleasant." Without waiting for a response, he started counting. 3, 2. By the time he reached 1, the old man had already appeared directly in front of Xian. There was no warning, no sound. One moment he was several meters away, and the next he was close enough for Xian to feel his breath. It scared him so badly that he instinctively stumbled backward. The old man tilted his head in confusion. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Unfortunately, Xian couldn't even hear the question properly. His ears were still ringing from the earlier impact, and every sound reached him as little more than muffled noise. The old man misunderstood his silence completely. With an annoyed sigh, he slowly drew his sword. "If you won't talk, maybe I should just cut you down." The sight of the blade instantly snapped Xian's senses back into place. "Wait!" he shouted, practically throwing his hands into the air. "I can hear you now. Please don't kill me." The old man lowered his sword just enough to steady him before letting out a satisfied grunt. "Good. At least you're not hopeless." Then he asked the question again. "What's your name?" "Xian." The old man frowned immediately. What a pathetic name. Xian blinked. After everything he'd just been through, this was the first thing the old man had to say. Naturally, he couldn't help wondering what kind of ridiculous name this terrifying old man was hiding. Almost as if he had read Xian's mind, the old man suddenly swung his sword. A massive boulder nearby split clean in half before collapsing into pieces. "I'm Diadon." Xian stared at the destroyed rock, then back at the old man. "What did the rock ever do to you?" Diadon ignored the question entirely. Instead, he frowned at Xian again. "Dumbass. Xiang's eye twitched. I've known you for less than 5 minutes. Why do you keep calling me that? For a very simple reason. Diadon pointed toward the area where Xiang had first appeared. You walk straight into a snare. The word meant absolutely nothing to Xiang. Seeing the confusion on his face, Diadon folded his arms and explained. Whenever a dungeon accumulated more mana than it could safely contain, it created another temporary entrance to release the excess energy before the entire dungeon became unstable. The problem was that these emergency entrances didn't just leak mana, they also pulled nearby living creatures inside. Anyone unlucky enough to be caught in one would be dragged into the dungeon without warning. That's called a snare. Xiang slowly turned toward the entrance he'd fallen through earlier. So I was dragged in here by accident. Diadon nodded. Most people never experience one in their entire lives. Then he looked Xiang up and down before adding, so your luck must be absolutely terrible. At this point, Xiang didn't even argue. Considering everything that had happened since arriving in Neo's soul, that statement was hard to deny. It also reminded him exactly who was responsible for throwing him into that cursed mine in the first place. Manhwa. The more he thought about that man's face, the more determined he became to settle the score one day. Dumbass. There it is again, Xiang groaned. Ignoring the complaint, Diadon suddenly stepped closer. If you want to survive in a place like this, stop relying only on your eyes. Xiang frowned. What does that even mean? Use your mana. The old man tapped 2 fingers near his own eyes. Gather your mana here. Although confused, Xiang decided to trust him. He slowly concentrated the mana flowing through his body and directed it toward his eyes, just as Diadon instructed. The change was immediate. His vision sharpened. The surrounding mana became visible, flowing through the air like invisible currents. Then his expression froze. Standing only a few meters away was another monster, except it hadn't been there before. Or at least, he thought it hadn't. The beast blended so perfectly with its surroundings that it was practically invisible. Without sensing its mana, Xiang never would have known it existed. Diadon noticed the horrified look on his face and gave a small nod. He'd saved him twice. At this point, curiosity completely overwhelmed him. Who are you really, dumbass? Xiang let out a long sigh. I swear, that's the only word you know. I'm Diadon. I got that part. No, the old man replied. That's all you need to know. Before Xiang could ask another question, Diadon rested his hand on the hilt of his sword and looked toward the sky. You wanted to know how strong I am, didn't you? A grin slowly spread across his face. Then pay attention. With one smooth motion, he drew his blade and called out the name of his technique. The instant the sword left its sheath, an enormous shockwave tore across the dungeon. Xiang instinctively covered his ears as the entire volcanic cavern trembled beneath the pressure. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the sky erupted. Dozens of fiery bird-like monsters burst from every direction, circling above the lava-like predators that had finally found fresh prey. Diadon's smile only widened. Perfect. Then, to Xiang's complete disbelief, the old man looked at him and casually said, You're on your own. Before Xiang could even protest, Diadon launched himself straight toward the swarm, leaving the exhausted teenager completely surrounded. Xiang slowly looked around. Every direction was blocked. Every monster had locked onto him. You've got to be kidding me. The birds let out piercing screeches, then they attacked all at once. Xiang immediately looked around, desperately searching for some kind of escape, but there wasn't one. The flaming birds had already surrounded him from every direction, darting through the air far faster than his eyes could follow. Before he could even react, one of them slashed across his shoulder. Then another clipped his arm. Another tore through his clothes. Attacks were fatal on their own, but together they were slowly wearing him down. Every time he tried to track one target, another attacked from his blind spot. Compared to Diadon, who was casually hunting monsters like it was another day at work, Xiang couldn't even defend himself properly. He instinctively raised his arms to protect his face as more attacks rained down from every direction. His clothes were quickly shredded, leaving fresh cuts all over his body. Frustration began replacing panic. He had already survived the desert, escaped death in the mines, fallen into a dungeon, and barely lived through a monster attack. After all that, was he really going to die to a flock of oversized birds? The thought alone made him grit his teeth. As another bird swooped toward him, Xiang suddenly remembered what Diadon had said only moments earlier. Stop relying on your eyes. Use your mana. At first, he had no idea what the old man meant, but now it finally started making sense. His vision wasn't the problem. The monsters were simply too fast. If he wanted to survive, he'd have to sense them before he could see them. Even while cursing himself for how helpless he was, Xiang refused to give up. He closed his eyes for the briefest moment and focused, gathering mana toward them, just like Diadon had shown him. Slowly, the chaotic battlefield changed. Instead of chasing the birds with his eyesight, he began feeling the flow of mana around him. Faint traces of magical energy streaked through the air, revealing the birds' movements before they reached him. There, The instant one entered his range, Xian swung. His weapon connected. One bird fell. A second immediately followed, diving in from another angle. But this time Xian reacted before it could strike. Another swing, another clean hit. For the first time since the fight began, the flock hesitated. A small smile appeared on Xian's face. He had finally found a way to fight back. Meanwhile, Diadon was having the time of his life. While Xian struggled against a handful of birds, the old swordsman was already battling monsters several times their size. The enormous creature clean in half. The monster collapsed instantly. Too weak. The disappointment in his voice almost sounded genuine. I was hoping for a better fight. He let out a quiet sigh, looking around the dungeon as if searching for something more entertaining. Dungeons really aren't what they used to be. Watching the enormous beast die so effortlessly, Xian almost felt sorry for it. Just moments ago, he had been fighting for his own life against birds that were barely scratching Diadon's attention, while the old man casually treated monsters capable of wiping out entire groups of awakeners like they were nothing more than oversized pests. I seriously can't believe this guy. Before Xian could process what he had just witnessed, a terrifying pressure suddenly swept across the dungeon. The atmosphere changed instantly. His body froze. A deafening roar echoed through the volcanic cavern with enough force to shake the ground beneath his feet. The pressure alone drove Xian down onto one knee. His stomach twisted violently, and before he knew it, he was coughing and throwing up from the overwhelming force. Barely managing to stand again, he looked toward Diadon. What was that? The old man didn't seem bothered in the slightest. He casually rested his sword on his shoulder. That was the dungeon boss. Seeing Xian's confused expression, Diadon continued. Every dungeon has one creature that rules over everything else. Kill the boss, and the dungeon eventually collapses. That's the reason I came here. Almost on cue, a massive shadow descended from above. The temperature seemed to rise as enormous wings spread across the sky, blocking out the light pouring in from the lava below. A gigantic drake slowly landed before them, its scales glowing crimson against the molten landscape. The crimson drake, Diadon muttered. Xian's eyes widened. A drake? Does that mean it's a dragon? Diadon immediately shook his head. Not even close. His tone almost sounded disappointed. If it were a real dragon, this would have been much more interesting. Even so, the creature standing before them was terrifying enough. Waves of mana rolled off its body, and surrounding it was a shimmering blue barrier unlike anything Xian had seen before. He suddenly remembered something he'd heard back in Neo's soul. Monsters ranked B-class and above developed unique characteristics much like human awakeners. Their mana color often revealed the type of abilities they specialized in. His eyes locked onto the barrier surrounding the drake. Blue. His expression changed immediately. Diadon, it's a magic type. The warning came a fraction of a second too late. Without hesitation, the crimson drake opened its jaws and unleashed a torrent of black flames straight toward them. Xian's body completely froze. His mind screamed at him to run. His legs refused to move. Before the flames could reach him, Diadon disappeared. The old man shot forward so quickly that Xian barely caught a glimpse of him. In the next instant, Diadon's massive sword crashed directly into the drake's skull, knocking the enormous creature backward before its attack could fully connect. The drake recovered almost instantly, swinging one massive claw toward him. Diadon raised his sword to counter, but instead of retreating, the beast grabbed him mid-swing, trapping him within its claws. Xian's heart skipped a beat. For the first time since meeting him, Diadon had actually been caught. The crimson drake didn't hesitate, still holding him in place. It opened its jaws once again, as black flames gathered deep inside its throat. A point-blank breath attack. Even Xian knew there was no way anyone could survive that. Then Diadon smiled. Just before the flames were released, he slammed one hand against the drake's jaw and forced its mouth shut. The fire exploded inside its own mouth instead. The drake let out a roar of agony as smoke burst from between its clenched teeth. Diadon looked it straight in the eyes. Hurts, doesn't it? His grip tightened around the hilt of his sword. Don't worry, I'll put you out of your misery. With another burst of strength, he broke free from the drake's claws and charged right back into battle, leaving Xian with only one objective: stay alive. Unfortunately, that was becoming harder by the second. The shockwaves from their battle tore across the dungeon like natural disasters. Xian sprinted through the volcanic terrain, desperately trying to stay out of range. But every clash between Diadon and the drake sent another devastating wave racing toward him. Realizing he couldn't outrun them forever, he quickly manipulated the volcanic ash around him, forming a wall behind his back in hopes of softening the impact. It helped barely. Each shockwave still rattled his entire body. This one was different. It reached Xian before he even had time to react. His ash wall shattered instantly. The force slammed into him like a runaway train, launching him high into the air before violently throwing him across the dungeon. His body bounced across the rocky ground before finally skidding toward the edge of a river of molten magma. Xion forced himself to stop just inches before the lava. His eyes slowly drifted downward. 1 more meter, and he would have disappeared beneath the magma forever. He couldn't help letting out a bitter laugh. So this is really how I die. While Xion fought just to stay alive, Diadon didn't spare him a single glance. His full attention remained on the Crimson Drake, which was growing more furious with every passing second. What kind of excuse for a dungeon boss are you? Diadon scoffed. I've fought stronger monsters that weren't even in charge. The constant insults finally pushed the Drake over its limit. Its entire body began gathering mana. The surrounding air trembled. Even the lava below started churning violently. Black flames condensed inside its mouth, growing denser and denser until they formed a terrifying sphere of compressed magical energy. Seeing the attack take shape, Diadon's grin only grew wider. Now that's more like it. For the first time since the battle began, the Crimson Drake finally unleashed everything it had. The moment that black inferno erupts from the Crimson Drake's mouth, the entire dungeon turns into hell. The beam tears through the battlefield, like the world itself is being erased, swallowing rock, fire, and everything unlucky enough to stand in its path. And somehow, it keeps getting bigger. Bro wasn't firing an attack anymore. The Drake had basically launched a natural disaster. The monster keeps pouring more and more power into it until eventually the flames die down and silence falls over the battlefield. The Crimson Drake slowly lifts its head. No movement, no laughter, no insults, nothing. For the first time since this nightmare started, the beast finally relaxes. That insane old man had to be dead, right? Then a voice echoes from above, looking for someone. The Drake freezes. Oh no, oh, this poor creature is finished. The giant monster slowly turns around and sees the last thing it ever wanted to see, casually squatting on top of its body like he's taking a break during a morning walk. And somehow it gets worse. His sword is buried almost a full meter into the Drake's flesh. The old man calmly pats the weapon before speaking. You know, I've been looking for one of your kind for a very long time. The Drake growls weakly. Diadon smiles. My crayon has been hungry. He gently grips the hilt. The Drake's entire body convulses. Mana floods from the sword directly into the beast as the blade pushes deeper and deeper through flesh and bone. The giant monster thrashes violently. Its screams shake the dungeon. But no matter how hard it struggles, it cannot escape. A few moments later, the movement stops. The Crimson Drake falls silent, and Crayon begins to glow. A deep crimson aura spreads across the blade, as if it had just devoured the monster's very existence. Diadon stares at his weapon with genuine satisfaction. Good, you've broken your limits again. Meanwhile, our boy is standing there, wondering if he's hallucinating from blood loss, because this old man is seriously having an emotional reunion with his sword. Xion finally speaks up. Why are you talking to your weapon like it's your wife? The old man ignores the insult completely. Honestly, fair enough. If your sword helps you solo a Crimson Drake by yourself, you've earned the right to be weird. Diadon finally glances towards Xion. His eyebrows rise slightly. You're still alive? Bro sounds offended. Xion lets out a tired laugh. Trust me, I almost wasn't. After being blasted into the abyss, he didn't sit there waiting for fate to kill him. The moment he started falling, he forced his sand ability to create a cushion beneath him. Not enough to stop the impact completely, but enough to stop himself from becoming human tomato paste. At this point, even Xion is impressed with himself. Seriously, this dude has developed a PhD in refusing to die. He also admits something else. Getting hit by Diadon's shockwaves every 5 minutes may have accidentally turned his reflexes into survival instincts. The old man gives a small nod. Not bad. But before he can say anything else, his expression changes. Without warning, Diadon grabs Xion by the shirt collar like he's carrying groceries. The dungeon is collapsing. Xion blinks. Okay, the boss is dead, still following. We leave now. Xion points at himself. And that explains why I'm being carried like luggage. The old man bursts out laughing. Not because the joke was funny, because apparently, Murder Grandpa already had a solution. A tiny black crack suddenly opens in front of them, before Xion can react. Iodin throws him. Actually no, throws is too gentle. The old man absolutely launches him. See ya. Midair, Xion unloads every insult he knows. You old bastard. You're worse than Park Manho. I hope your back gives out. Then the portal swallows him whole. A second later, he gets violently spat out of another crack in space. His body bounces across the sand several times before finally stopping, face first. As expected, Xion lifts his head and spits out enough sand to build a sandcastle. Where the hell am I now? The surface. Diadon says it so casually that it almost sounds normal. Apparently, defeating a dungeon boss creates temporary exits leading outside. Hearing that only makes Xion angrier. We could have walked out. The old man snorts. I preferred this method. Of course he did. After a few moments, Diadon's expression suddenly turns serious. He admits that Xiang's sand manipulation is surprisingly useful, but right now, the kid is about as useful as a blunt knife, which means he has a choice to make. Option 1. Head south to New Soul City. Go back to his old life. Keep surviving as another dirtier nobody in a dying world. Option 2. Follow him, train under him, become stronger, faster, deadlier. Possibly still an idiot, but a much stronger idiot. Xiang stares at him. How long would that take? Diadon shrugs. Months? Years? Decades? I have no idea. Not exactly the most convincing sales pitch. Zon falls silent. Because this decision changes everything. Diadon simplifies it, the only way he knows how. Go home and live your boring little life. Or come with me and enjoy a 99% chance of dying horribly. The boy bursts into laughter. Have you completely lost your mind? He starts listing all the wonderful things waiting for him back home. His luxurious palace. His incredibly expensive bed. His mountain of wealth. His army of servants. The old man stares at him. Both know he's lying through his teeth. Xiang continues. Anyway, and now you expect me to abandon all that just to follow some smelly old geezer through burning deserts. He points accusingly. For all I know, you could die tomorrow from old age. Diadon nods. Correct? That's your response? Yes. This old man is impossible. Xiang lets out the most dramatic sigh of his life. What a painful decision. What a tragic sacrifice. Unfortunately, he agrees. His reasoning? Simple. Whenever somebody annoys him, he settles it personally. And right now there are several names on that list. One of them happens to be standing directly in front of him. He openly admits that Diadon is part of his revenge list. The old man laughs. Xiang doesn't. Because he means it. He's weaker than everyone. Too weak to protect himself. Too weak to settle his grudges. Too weak to change anything. But this old monster beside him, he's stronger than anyone Zun has ever seen. And deep down, he doubts he'll ever meet anyone stronger. The old man cuts him off. So you're confident? Xiang clenches his fist. I'm going to become stronger than everyone. Diadon clicks his tongue. That attitude gets people buried early. Then he turns around. Keep up, dumbass. And just like that, their journey begins. Several hours later, Xiang is questioning every decision he has ever made. Sweat pours down his face. His legs feel like jelly dot. The old man keeps walking without slowing down, even once. After 6 hours, Xiang finally breaks. Can we stop? No answer. 5 minutes? Nothing. 1 minute. Silence. The old man keeps walking. Xiang stares in disbelief. I'm not dating a moody teenager, so why am I dealing with this? The desert itself feels alive. The heat is unbearable. The loose sand steals energy with every step. At this rate, heatstroke is coming for him personally. And the moment he reaches his limit, Diadon finally speaks. Fool. Xiang looks up. You can't even use your own power properly. The boy stares blankly. You're a sand manipulator? Why are you struggling to walk on sand? That actually shuts him up. When Xiang tries bringing up the fact that he only awakened a few days ago and is still F-class, the old man immediately gets annoyed. I don't care. He grabs the boy by the collar. Do you think people are born S-class? You think the world blessed everyone except you? His voice grows louder. Are you planning to surrender before you've even started? For a moment, Xiang cannot answer. Diadon finally lets go. Figure it out yourself. Understand your power. No one knows it better than you. For one brief moment, the old man almost sounds wise. Then he ruins it. If you fail, you'll die. There it is. The real Diadon returns. Xiang focuses. His current control range is about 5 meters. The sand around him is shallow. If he can compress it, make it harder. Walking should become easier. He tries, fails, tries again, fails again, fails again. Then suddenly it works. The sand beneath his feet hardens. Walking becomes effortless. For about 30 seconds, then his mana starts evaporating. Plan A is dead. Time for Plan B. Instead of controlling the ground, he channels mana directly into his legs. Surprisingly, that works too. The old man secretly smiles. The kid keeps experimenting, keeps adapting, keeps trying. Diadon remembers his own younger days. Despite all the F-class nonsense coming out of Xiang's mouth, his actual talent feels much higher. E-class, maybe D-class. The potential is there. Then, suddenly, Xiang discovers something new. He sprints toward the old man. I figured it out. Instead of controlling all the surrounding sand, he's only manipulating the grains touching his feet. The mana cost drops dramatically. Walking becomes easy. For approximately 10 seconds, Xiang becomes unbearably smugged. He even flashes the old man a middle finger. Huge mistake. Diadon's fist descends from heaven itself. Bonk. Stop wasting time. The next thing Xiang sees is darkness. When he finally wakes up, his face is buried in sand. Again, the old man sits nearby, chewing beef jerky. Oh good, you're alive. Apparently, carrying unconscious disciples across a desert is inconvenient. Xian slowly sits up. Every muscle in his body screams in protest. Without saying anything, Diadon tosses him some jerky. Then he starts talking about the old days. Back then, being weak wasn't a death sentence. The strong protected the weak. Power came with responsibility. At least that's how it was supposed to be. That world is gone now. The old man's voice carries something Xian hasn't heard before. Regret, maybe even sadness. Then the moment passes. Get up if you don't want to die. Classic Diadon. This time, Xian doesn't argue. He quietly listens. The old man throws him another piece of jerky. Maybe beneath all the insults and head punches, there really is wisdom here. Diadon looks ancient enough to have witnessed the invention of fire. But age brings experience, and experience keeps people alive. While watching him eat, Xian notices something strange. The old man's teeth should not be capable of handling jerky this tough. Then he figures it out. You soften it first, let saliva do the work. Only then do you chew. Simple, efficient. A survival trick for desert life. It hits Xian all at once. The old man isn't feeding him. He's teaching him. Teaching him how to survive without realizing it. Teaching him how to live. Like giving someone a fishing rod instead of a fish. That night, they continue walking beneath the stars. Xian immediately starts begging for more jerky. Diadon immediately ignores him. Some things never change. Eventually, the heat disappears, and the cold arrives. Hard. Xian starts shivering violently, sneezing non-stop. His body feels like it's about to freeze solid. Meanwhile, Diadon looks like he's enjoying a beach vacation. The old monster stretches comfortably, completely unaffected. Seriously? What is this guy made of? At the same time, Xian still cannot understand why the lunatic keeps talking to his sword. Then thirst arrives. He asks for water. Diadon responds by drinking all of his own water directly in front of him, not sharing even a drop. The level of villainy is honestly impressive. Eventually, Xian realizes something important. Unlike Diadon, he doesn't have enough clothing to collect dew. The old man can squeeze moisture from his fabric. He can't, so he does the only thing he can. He crouches down and starts licking dew droplets from his own body. Dignity is temporary. Survival is forever. Diadon watches in disbelief. Dotard, Xian immediately protests. I'm not a dotard, I'm a proud moron. The old man ignores him. Shut up and listen. Xian goes silent. Slowly he begins noticing vibrations. Tiny movements beneath the sand. Then more and more. They're coming from every direction. His eyes widen. Hundreds of glowing eyes appear in the darkness, watching, waiting, surrounding them. Horned hyenas, predators of the desert, normally active during the night. Unfortunately for Xian, dawn hasn't arrived yet. The creatures bare their fangs, their bodies tense, ready to tear him apart. And right as the beasts prepare to attack, the old man calmly asks, "Well, are you going to stand there and die?" The old man stares at him like a teacher, waiting for the wrong answer on a test. Xian snorts and shakes his head. No chance. No way he is asking this fossil for help. Somehow the madness has already started rubbing off on our boy, because instead of panicking, he actually laughs. Then tells the old geezer he does not need help from some dusty relic from ancient history. Big confidence, potentially terrible timing. The sand around his feet begins to move, twisting, rising, answering his call. If the desert wants blood tonight, then blood it gets. The first hyena charges. Bad decision. A sand bullet rips through its skull before it even reaches him. Another leaps forward. Massive spikes explode from the ground and turn the beast into roadside decoration. Suddenly, the battlefield becomes a death zone. Every step forward means death. Every charge ends with another body hitting the sand. For a moment, it actually works. Then reality arrives. The enemies keep coming, and coming, and coming. Xian grits his teeth. Bro feels like somebody trapped him inside an endless COD Zombies match with no ammo crate in sight. His chest burns. His vision blurs. His body starts giving him warning messages. At this rate, the mana exhaustion will kill him before the monsters do. And that realization hits harder than any claw ever could. Power alone means nothing if you burn through it in 5 minutes. He needs efficiency, not firepower. Another Xian bullet forms in his hand. He studies it carefully. Thinking, calculating, trying to squeeze every drop of value from every bit of mana. Unfortunately, the hyenas are not interested in academic discussions. One of them lunges forward and sinks its fangs deep into his arm. Xian barely throws it off. But the damage is ugly. His arm looks like somebody used it for target practice. The holes sting. Blood drips onto the sand. And somehow, that becomes the answer. His eyes widen, because the wound teaches him something important. Small holes, minimal effort, maximum damage. Suddenly everything clicks into place. The pack charges again. Hungry, confident, ready to finish him off. Xian does not move. He simply waits. The hyenas get closer, closer, closer. Then he strikes. Hundreds of razor-thin sand spikes erupt from beneath the battlefield. The desert itself turns traitor, bodies freeze mid-charge. The beasts collapse, one after another. Each pierced clean through. One attack, one kill. No wasted movement. No wasted mana. Just efficiency. Beautiful, terrifying efficiency. Xian bursts into laughter, and for the first time, he sounds suspiciously similar to his insane teacher. Turns out blowing enemies apart is fun, but surgically deleting them with perfect precision. Now that feels good. Mana is life out here. Waste it and you die. Meanwhile, the old man continues fighting in the most ridiculous way imaginable. No fancy tricks, no strategy, just walking directly into danger like common sense owes him money. Hyenas bite his arms, clamp onto his body, and the lunatic starts laughing. Actually laughing. Like they are giving him a massage instead of trying to eat him alive. Eventually, the old man gets bored. A dangerous look flashes across his eyes. Xian sees it immediately, and instantly regrets being nearby. Not again. Please not again. The old man grins, then tells Crayon to erase the problem. The next moment, the world explodes. Power erupts across the desert. Shockwaves rip through the battlefield. Sand flies everywhere. Hyenas become furry cannonballs flying into the horizon. Xian barely survives by throwing up a sand wall in front of himself. When the dust settles, silence. Complete silence. The destruction stretches across the desert as far as he can see. Xian just stares, because what exactly are you supposed to say after witnessing that? At this point, he is not even sure Diodon counts as human anymore. Nobody does that without skills, without abilities, without cheating somehow. And yet somehow, the old monster did. That realization crushes whatever arrogance Xian still had left. Then the old man suddenly starts coughing his lungs out from all the dust he created himself. Perfect timing. Because the alpha chooses that exact moment to attack. The giant horned hyena charges forward. Lightning crackles around its horn, and before anyone can react, the beast drives it straight through Diodon. Xian freezes. The old man looks down at the wound, almost confused, as if he is wondering who gave this animal permission to stab him. Apparently this one is different. Special, at least B rank. Xian immediately shouts for him to get away. Turns out worrying about Diodon is still a beginner mistake. The old man casually grabs the horn with one hand. Lightning surges through his body. Electricity dances across his skin, and he does not care. Not even a little. Xian experiences a full system crash, because whatever laws of physics existed before this moment have officially resigned. Even the alpha starts backing away. The monster genuinely looks uncomfortable, mostly because the old freak appears to be enjoying the lightning, like it is relieving back pain. After finishing his free therapy session, Diodon informs her that her subscription to life has expired. He jumps forward, drives his blade deep into her body, and blood sprays across the battlefield. Just like that, the fight ends. Xian slowly realizes he may have underestimated the old man by approximately several planets worth of power. Afterward, they begin harvesting materials from the bodies. Xian wears the alpha hide over his shoulders. Honestly, not a bad look. Then he asks the question he has been waiting to ask forever. When are they leaving this cursed desert? Instead of answering, Diodon starts collecting the horns. Apparently, they are valuable materials for lightning weapons. Then, without warning, he throws Xian a dagger. Congratulations. The tutorial mode has officially ended. From now on, the kid finds his own food. No more free meals, no more handouts. Eat the wrong part of a horned hyena, and congratulations, you are dead. Only the flank muscle is safe. Everything else is basically nature, trying to assassinate you. As Diodon casually cuts meat from the carcasses, he notices Xian, standing there watching. Immediately, he snaps at him. If he wants breakfast, he better earn it. So under the fading darkness of the desert, Xian gets to work. By sunrise, the difference is obvious. His movements are sharper, cleaner, more confident. Water is still a problem, but at least his bag is full of food. And thanks to sandwalking, traveling during the day feels almost easy. Almost. Naturally, that tiny bit of success immediately goes to his head. He smirks at Diodon, asks if the old man is jealous of his amazing movement skill. For once, he even dodges the incoming punch. Victory. For about half a second, because Crayon delivers the follow-up hit directly to his skull. Balance restored, while Xian spits sand out of his mouth. The old man complains that his back hurts, and a cheap trick does not make somebody special. Xian grumbles that he was only joking. Then he pauses. Something feels strange. The air. It feels different. Moist. Cooler. For a second, he thinks he is imagining things. Then he sees Diodon looking forward, and immediately understands. Over the next dune, beyond the endless sea of sand, lies every desert traveler's dream, an oasis. For a moment, Xiang forgets every complaint he has ever made, because right there, beyond the dune, is actual water. Real water, not a mirage, not a hallucination, an honest-to-goodness oasis. Our boy practically loses his mind, without waiting for permission, without checking for danger, without using even a single brain cell. He sprints downhill toward the water. The old man clicks his tongue, already disappointed, already judging, but he does not stop him. Xiang reaches the shore and immediately dunks his face into the water. Cold, refreshing, perfect. After weeks trapped inside an oven disguised as a continent, this feels like heaven. His dry skin finally cools down. His aching body relaxes. For the first time since arriving in this nightmare of a world, he allows himself to rest. Then he notices it. A light, deep beneath the surface. Soft, beautiful, mesmerizing. Without realizing it, he keeps staring. The light slowly pulls him in. His thoughts become sluggish. His body grows heavy. Even breathing starts feeling unimportant. Far above him, Diodon suddenly notices what is happening. His expression changes instantly. He shouts Xiang's name and rushes down the dune. But our boy does not respond. Because, while he is busy admiring the pretty light, something massive moves beneath the water. Slowly, silently, getting closer and closer. At the last possible second, Diodon grabs him and yanks him out of the water. A gigantic creature erupts from the oasis behind him. Rows of teeth snap shut where his head was moments earlier. Xiang crashes into the sand, still trying to understand what almost happened. Meanwhile, the old man launches himself straight toward the monster. No hesitation, no fear, just violence. One swing, that is all it takes. The blade flashes. The giant creature collapses. Fight over. Xiang watches the scene unfold while his brain struggles to reboot. Then his attention drifts toward a rainbow forming above the oasis. Because apparently near-death experiences do not improve his attention span. Diodon drags the creature onto the shore. A sand angler, a magic beast that hunts, using the glowing lure attached to its head. Victims stare at the light, lose themselves, then become lunch. The old man's face darkens, and a moment later, Xiang receives emergency disciplinary action directly to the skull. Diodon tears into him for forgetting everything he learned. Carelessness kills people in the desert, and idiots die first. For once, Xiang does not argue, because this time, the old man is right. If Diodon had arrived even a second later, the oasis would have become his grave. The old man lets out a tired sigh. Seeing that the lesson finally landed, he drops the subject, at least for now. Instead, he walks over to the corpse of the giant anglerfish and drives his blade into its stomach. A few moments later, he pulls something out. Something large, round, and absolutely disgusting. A giant sack-like organ dangles from his hand, still dripping onto the sand below. Xiang stares at it. The old man stares at him. The organ stares at nobody because thankfully it does not have eyes. Then Diodon tosses it straight into his arms. The kid barely catches it before nearly dropping it again, because there is only one explanation for this situation, and he already hates it. The old man casually explains that the gallbladder of a giant anglerfish is an extremely valuable medicine, a treasure capable of strengthening the body and improving survival in the desert. Most awakened would kill to get their hands on one. Unfortunately for Xian, getting his hands on it is exactly the problem, because Diodon immediately tells him to eat it. Our boy looks down at the slimy organ in horror, then back at the old man, then back at the organ. Surely this is a joke. It is not. The old geezer makes it very clear that refusal is not one of the available options. So with the enthusiasm of a man signing his own death certificate, Xian takes the first bite. Instant regret. The taste is catastrophic. It feels like somebody blended medicine, rotten fish, and pure hatred into one meal. Every instinct in his body begs him to stop. Unfortunately, self-preservation loses against self-preservation, because not eating it might be even more dangerous than eating it. So he keeps going. One bite, then another, then another. Strangely, the more he eats, the hungrier he becomes, as if something deep inside his body is demanding more. Eventually, the entire thing disappears. Xiang wipes his mouth and prays the nightmare is over. Diodon looks at him, then calmly announces that now comes the painful part. Xiang immediately asks what painful part. A few seconds later, he gets his answer. Xiang pulls his new cloak tighter around his shoulders and grins. Not bad. A few weeks ago, this dude was fighting for his life with scraps and luck. Now, he is walking through the desert looking like the final boss of a low-budget fantasy movie. Unfortunately, the desert refuses to let anyone enjoy themselves for too long. Violent winds begin roaring across the dunes. Sand rises into the sky. The storm arrives without warning. A proper dessert welcome party. Surprisingly, Xian barely struggles. The boost from the sand angler medicine transformed him more than he realized. Meanwhile, the old man just keeps walking. No complaints, no slowing down, no signs of exhaustion. At this point, Xion is starting to suspect the Giza runs on nuclear energy. The silence somehow makes things worse. Diodon has barely spoken for days. Not one insult, not one punch, nothing. Xion starts wondering if the old man is going through some kind of desert version of male menopause. 2 whole weeks pass. 2 weeks of walking, 2 weeks of sand, 2 weeks of questioning every life decision that led him here. Eventually, he starts wondering if the old man even knows where they are going. That question dies instantly when a giant ant erupts from the sand behind him. Xion reacts immediately. A sand beam tears through the air and slams into the monster. Direct hit. Problem solved. Or so he thought. The ant keeps moving. Still alive. Still angry. Xion raises an eyebrow. Now that has his attention. Looks like this bug skipped leg day. Absolutely never. More movement ripples beneath the sand. Then more and more. Using his senses, he detects multiple signatures approaching from underground. Fantastic. The local wildlife has decided to hold a family reunion. Xion drives his hand into the sand. The ground erupts beneath the creatures, forcing them upward. Ant after ant climbs to the surface. Soon they surround him from every direction.